quoting Netanyahu, who is certainly not a naive man. Um, of course,
But the effect, by the way, Mr. Assange, for Netanyahu is that what he's been saying publicly, i.e., that Arab leaders have privately been saying that Iran is the greatest threat and they want Israel and the U.S. to do something, the revelations have been in his interest.
of course, I mean, we're talking about a sophisticated politician who is that sentiment is on the side in this issue. But I suggest it is generally, of course there are exceptions, but generally true across every issue. Where we are negotiating, we need to be able to negotiate with a clear understanding of what the ground is and what our mutual positions are. Of course, if one side has a disproportionate amount of knowledge compared to the other side, there cannot be proper negotiations or proper understanding of the playing field in which events are to happen. So we would like to see all organisations that keep their authority and power with secrecy opened up as much as possible, not entirely, but as much as possible, in order to level out that asymmetric information playing field. Now, for the United States, its government actually has more information available to it than any other government. And so it is already in an asymmetric position. So I think this disclosure of diplomatic information, which is often third hand, yes, it will allow people to understand more clearly the sort of broad activities of the US State Department, which acts not, of course, in the interests of the US people, but in the interests of the State Department. It will allow people, other countries, to see that, but it will also permit more reasonable negotiations and reveal a lot about the Arab states and Central Asian republics to the rest of the world and to their peoples.
But you do clearly have a hierarchy of societies that are more closed than open, and you mentioned China and Russia as two of them. I mean, in that hierarchy, I mean, the U.S. is probably the most open society on the planet. I mean,
becoming more closed. But as the U.S. as a superpower, I mean, let's just imagine that if Russia had the same resources, the same temperate climate, and the same number of people as the United States, would it be a better behaved or worse behaved superpower?
Right.
Well, the answer is it would be, based upon its current practices, it would be a much worse behaved superpower. And what has kept the United States in check to the degree that it has been kept in check from abusing its powers is this is federalism, so the strength of the states, and a relative degree of openness, which probably peaked in about 1978 and has been on the way down, unfortunately, since.
What would I want to ask you a broader question about the role of technology and the burgeoning world of social media. How does that affect the goal that you're trying to achieve of more transparent and more open societies? I assume that enables what you're trying to do.
Well, let me just talk about transparency for a moment. It is not our goal to achieve a more transparent society. It's our goal to achieve a more just society. And most of the times, transparency and openness tends to lead in that direction because abusive plans or behavior get opposed. And so those organizations which intend to commit them are opposed before the plans are implemented. or if it's an exposure of something that has previously been done, the organisation tends to lose a bit of its power, which is then transferred to another group or another organisation. But for the rise of social media, it's quite interesting. When we first started, we thought we would have the analytical work done by bloggers and people who wrote Wikipedia articles and so on, and we thought that was a natural, given that we have lots of quality, important content. Surely it's more interesting to write an article about top secret Chinese censorship list, or an internal document from Somalia, or secret documents revealing what happened in Fallujah, all of which we have published, than it is to simply write a blog about what's on the front page of the New York Times, or about your cat or something. But actually it turns out that that is not at all true. There's the bulk of the heavy lifting, heavy analytical lifting that is done with our materials is done by us, and it is done by the professional journalists we work with, and by professional human rights activists. It is not done by the broader community. However, once the initial lifting is done, once a story becomes a news item, then we start to see community involvement, which digs deeper and provides more perspective. So the social networks tend to be, for us, an amplifier of what we are doing, and also a supply of sources for us. So when I saw this problem early on in our first year, that the analytical effort that we thought would be supplied by internet citizens around the world was not, I saw that, well, actually, in terms of articles, the form tends to follow the funding. So you can't expect to get news-style articles out of people that are not funded through a career structure in the same way that news organisations are. You will get a different sort of form, and that form may be commentary, which sometimes is very good. We sometimes have very senior people providing commentary that is within their immediate experience, or we get sources who hand over material that is once again within their immediate experience and is an important issue to them. But what we don't get from the general internet community is people writing articles about an issue that they didn't have an intimate involvement with in the first place. And of course, if you think about it, that's natural. Why would they? The incentives are not there. When people write political commentary on blogs or on other social media, it is my experience that it is not, with some rare exceptions, their goal to expose the truth. Rather, it is their goal to position themselves amongst their peers on whatever the issue of the day is. And the most effective, the most economical way to do that is simply to take the story that's going around that has already created a market or an audience for itself, and say whether they're in favour of that interpretation or not.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, and I want to go now from the macro back to the micro, and ask you a specific question about PFC Manning. Was he the sole source of all the documents in the latest WikiLeaks dump?
Well, come on. We're a source protection organisation, so the last thing we would do is discuss possible sources. However, we do know that the FBI has been